Some mysteries get all the headlines, the big cases everyone knows. But what about the strange ones that slip through the cracks, the ones that leave behind more questions than answers? Today, we're diving into 3 of the weirdest deaths you've probably never heard of. From an impossible fall to a body found in a place it couldn't possibly be. In the summer of 2015, a demolition crew in Woodland Park, Colorado, began tearing down an old, vacant cabin. Among the crumbling bricks of its chimney, they made a grisly discovery: a skeleton wedged deep inside. Dental records later confirmed the remains belonged to 18-year-old Joshua Vernon Maddox, who had vanished from Woodland Park 7 years earlier. He said Josh was likely trying to climb down the chimney and became stuck, dying of exposure. There were no signs of injury or trauma on his body, and no evidence of drugs or foul play. But the details of this case, often called the boy in the chimney, raise as many questions as they answer. Josh Maddox had told his family that he was going for a walk. He never returned. His father, Mike Maddox, reported Josh missing on May 13th. Because Josh was 18 and healthy, police initially treated him as a possible runaway. Over the years, they searched and hoped for any news, clinging to the memory of Josh as a brilliant, kind, wonderful boy. They could never have imagined that the truth would come 7 years later from an abandoned cabin chimney just blocks from their home. When the cabin's owner, local builder Chuck Murphy, learned of the discovery, he notified authorities. The chimney's bricks were pried away, and crew members found a body folded in half, knees above the head. On September 28, 2015, Bourne released his findings. Josh Maddox's death was ruled an accident. Bourne explained that Josh probably had climbed down the chimney and encountered a heavy metal insert, a helilator, that blocked his path. Unable to climb back up past the insert, he became trapped and died in a fetal position from cold. But the story doesn't end there. This official version sounds straightforward, yet the scene in that cabin has baffled experts and the public alike. Josh's remains were found deep in the smoke chamber of the chimney, behind a large wooden breakfast bar that had been dragged in front of the fireplace, effectively blocking the firebox. Strangely, workers found Josh's jeans, shoes, and socks outside on the hearth. Inside the chimney, he was wearing only his thin thermal shirt. Chuck Murphy, the cabin's owner, pointed out that when the chimney was built about 25 years earlier, a heavy steel mesh was installed near the top to keep animals from climbing in. He insisted that adult-sized Josh couldn't have slid down past that grate. Murphy also noted the odd arrangement of Josh's clothes and the blocked fireplace, and he told a newspaper, "I know he did not go down that chimney. He got in the fireplace and went up." In his eyes, the evidence screamed homicide. Bourne met with Murphy and reviewed photos of the chimney. The coroner admitted the scene raised unsettling questions, but said he still found no forensic proof of a crime. He explained that if it were murder, they would have expected clues, maybe ropes or duct tape, footprints or bruises. Instead, Josh's body was neatly packaged in the chimney with no obvious injury. Bourne argued that stuffing an 18-year-old into a narrow chimney would have taken at least 2 people, yet nothing suggested a struggle. The conspiracy site unresolved.me and true crime blogs lay out these theories, but none are confirmed by police. For now, the coroner calls it a tragic accident gone wrong, a smart young man who took a wrong turn down a chimney. To this day, Joshua Maddox's story remains a grim mystery. An 18-year-old who walked away one spring morning in 2008 and whose fate was only revealed in 2015 when a cabin's old chimney gave up its secret. Andrew, 9, Alexander, 7, and Tanner, 5, were 3 young brothers in Morenci, Michigan. By late 2010, their parents, Tanya Zuvers and John Skelton, were going through a bitter divorce and custody battle. Zuvers had custody of the boys at that time, but she agreed to let Skelton spend Thanksgiving 2010 with them. According to their mother's testimony, the boys were typical, happy children. She described Andrew as smart as a whip who loved video games, Alexander as inquisitive and tinkering with gadgets, and little Tanner as excited to start big school like his older brothers. In the months before their disappearance, John Skelton had increasingly erratic behavior. In August 2010, he took the boys out of school without permission, claiming a trip to Florida, an act that ultimately led to the parents' divorce and Zuvers winning full custody. By November 2010, the family was fractured. Skelton had started dating again, alleged accused Zoovers of abusing the children, a claim she denies, while the brothers split their time between parents. On Thursday, November 25th, Thanksgiving Day, the three boys spent the holiday with their father at his Morenci home. The next morning, Friday, the boys were supposed to return to their mother. When Skelton failed to return them or answer Tanya's calls, she became alarmed.
At this point, I had no reason not to believe him. But each time I talked with him or texted with him, there was another twist. Something just wasn't setting right, and I'm going, ah. And then he finally said to me, well, I haven't been quite honest with you. I'm actually at home, and the boys are with my friend.
She traveled to his house, but John was not there. He was lying in a local hospital with a broken ankle, which he told staff he'd injured in a attempt. He refused to tell anyone about the children's whereabouts, so Zoovers notified police that her sons were missing, and a Michigan Amber Alert was issued. By late morning, November 26th, officers had obtained a search warrant and entered Skelton's home. They found the house in shambles, broken glass and severed electrical cords strewn about, but no sign of the boys. In the chaos, investigators found ominous clues: a noose hanging from the second-floor stairwell, an open Bible with a verse circled, and a handwritten note apparently addressed to Zoovers. "You will hate me forever, and I know this." The FBI later considered the note a passive admission to killing the children. John Skelton told police conflicting stories because at first he said the boys were visiting friends, then that they had been given to an unknown woman. He even claimed that he had handed them off to an underground group that would protect them from their mother. None of these leads panned out. In the days and weeks after Thanksgiving 2010, hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement personnel combed the woods, fields, and waterways of southeast Michigan and Ohio. Dogs, helicopters, and dive teams searched for the boys, but no trace was ever found. Law enforcement experts noted that Skelton's internet history showed searches for rat poison kill people and how to break a neck. In court in 2025, an FBI agent testified that John Skelton told a pastor, "I sent them home," referring to heaven, implying that he had killed them. After a decade of fruitless searching, investigators had come to no doubt whatsoever that the boys were dead. In September 2011, John Skelton was arrested and charged in Lenawee County. Prosecutors accused him of kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment of the children, and was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. Under Michigan law, this meant he could be released after 10 years if paroled. His plea deal upset some neighbors, but Skelton continued to insist he had done nothing wrong. For years, the case remained unsolved. The boys were never found, and by 2018, police had exhausted leads. On March 5, 2025, Judge Catherine Sala declared the Skelton brothers legally deceased. What happened to the Skelton brothers remains the subject of painful questions and theories. The leading one among law enforcement is that Skelton himself killed the boys shortly after Thanksgiving 2010. Investigators point to the diary of clues in his home: the destroyed room, the noose and suicide note, the Bible citation, as indicating a suicidal or homicidal breakdown rather than any secret rescue mission. Despite the circumstantial evidence pointing to murder, no body or direct proof was ever found. In late January of 1959, a group of 10 hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on a ski expedition into the Ural Mountains. The trip was led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. Their destination was Mount Otorten, a difficult trek that would earn them the highest hiking certification in the Soviet Union. Early on, one member of the group, Yura Udin, became ill and turned back. That decision ended up saving his life. The remaining 9 continued. On February 1st, they set up their final camp on the slope of Kholat Syakhl, just a few kilometers from their destination. When the hikers failed to return, search parties went out. On February 26th, rescuers located the group's tent. It was half buried in snow and appeared to have been cut open from the inside. All of the hikers' boots, jackets, and gear were still neatly inside, as if they had left in a rush. Even a loaf of bread sat unfinished on a plate. Investigators followed footprints leading away from the tent. The tracks were strange, some in boots, some in socks, and some completely barefoot. At the edge of the tree line, under a large cedar tree, 2 bodies were found. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko were wearing only their underwear. A small fire had been started nearby, and one of them showed burns on his body, as if he had been leaning too close. Further up the slope, 3 more hikers were discovered: Dyatlov, Zenita Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin. They were scattered along the path back toward the tent, as though they had tried to return but collapsed from exhaustion. None of these 5 had fatal injuries, and the official cause of death was hypothermia. For sensitivity reasons, I can't show the actual photos here, of course, since they're considered graphic. If you want to see them, they are available online, but please be advised that the images can be disturbing. The search continued for the remaining 4 hikers. It wasn't until May, when the snow began to melt, that their bodies were finally found in a ravine, partially buried in a collapsed snow shelter. These 4 had suffered catastrophic injuries. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had a fractured skull. Semyon Zolotaryov and Ludmila Dubinina had crushed ribs, injuries compared to those from a car accident. Strangely, there were no external wounds to explain the force. Dubinina's body was also missing her tongue and eyes, likely from natural decomposition in the water. Investigators noted another odd detail. Some of the hikers' clothing tested positive for radiation. Nothing at the site was stolen. No sign of a struggle was found, and the footprints suggested they had fled together, not chased. The official Soviet report concluded the group had died due to an unknown compelling force. That was the final word. Over the decades, countless theories have been put forward. Some say an avalanche forced them out of their tent. Others suggest military testing, chemical exposure, or even something supernatural. None of the explanations fit all the evidence. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of history's most chilling mysteries. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more mysteries in history every week.